Hey, Simon, welcome to Whatever Next Unplugged.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I'm so pleased that you agreed to come on the show because for the last couple of weeks, I've been reading your book, Be More Punk. And Simon, it so fits in the world of what I'm trying to get across in Whatever Next. Very much from that human side that I feel is often lacking in programs and projects. And I'm really keen to hear more about your lived experience behind the book and any experiences you've had in that transformation world with some of the behaviors and feelings that you're exposing here. So great you're here, but please, introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what's behind the book.
Okay. I mean, first of all, your book was, it's like we're coming at it from slightly different directions, but actually the point of it, that human contact point is just so vital. And I think that's why we're talking as well. And you've just used two really good words there, feelings and behaviors, which I think we'll pick up on a little bit more. So I'm obviously Simon. I've had I've had a long career. I've been working for 40 years, which is slightly depressing and slightly exciting. And I've been in sort of people development, learning and development, and the sort of the human and people side of stuff for 20 years now. And that's covered all variety of different areas, whether that's corporate, I've had long careers with Sainsbury's and, I went into insurance for years as well. I've run my own business twice, both successful, both just ran their courses. I've done a lot of contracting work in a huge variety of sectors. So I really got to the point of when I started Be More Punk, the Punk Incorporated, my actual business, it came from a very particular point for me. And that was I was beginning to get pretty fed up with what I was seeing in my particular world. So I think at the time I was seeing that my learning and development, human resource type, it felt old and stale. And I was getting really disappointed that people were using the same old models from the 60s. And I was thinking, no, there's a future of work here. We should be looking forward and moving forward and making those changes that we really need to make. And I wasn't seeing it. So I thought, well, I've got to do it. And it came from the punk thing came from me because it's kind of who I am, but it also had a bit of an attitude, which I think it needed. I think I needed to say, look, we need to challenge the status quo. We can't be stuck with the same stuff over and over. And so the book was really born from my personal experiences of just going through life and how the punk values that I've learned to live with work for me and how they can work for you. But then in business, I've experienced a lot of stuff as you know, I've worked on big transformations and change projects. And so half the book is born from my frustration that there is a better way to do things, and it's not just because it's better and everyone's happier and feels nicer. It works.
Totally.
You deliver better projects, you deliver benefits, all the things that they say they want and yet are not doing. So that's kind of...
Totally. And did you sense, you've worked on those transformations, those were the feelings you had and what you saw around the models and the training, the development, the sort of fabric underpinning those transformation programs. Did you sense when you were at the water cooler discussing how the programs and projects were going and how other people could be feeling, did you sense that other people who were in that same transformation team as you were in, whether that was at Sainsbury's or anywhere else, did you feel they were thinking the same?
Yeah. And the way I think there's tension. There's good tension and bad tension. All right. I think good tension drives things on. I think that if we know why we need to challenge, if we know why we need to have a bit of an argument, if we have a tough discussion, it's good tension if it's moving us forward. But the other kind of tension holds everything back. It's like an elastic band. If you get it the right way, it'll fire you off. But otherwise, it's holding you back. And where you see it and feel it is not in the slide decks that are being presented. It's in the meetings. It's in the meetings where it feels wrong because people aren't saying what they feel. They're not prepared to put their head above the parapet and say, I think this is the wrong way forward. No one's making any decisions. They won't challenge that that's not being done. And of course, what that turns into, and you can feel it, it's palpable. Everybody can feel it, but no one does anything about it. So then what happens? So it's the impact of that I found is the biggest problem, which is It's the corridor conversations after the meeting. I didn't agree with that because I didn't agree with it. It's the water cooler moments. I can't believe no one said anything. What is the impact of that? And that's where I've always been really frustrated with an undercurrent which has a direct impact on what happens.
Totally get that. And I think, when I reflected on what some of the stuff in your book, the bit that resonated the most for me with that scenario was the it's okay. And your challenge of it's okay to maybe put up with all these things. And I saw it as because the way we do things around here.
Yeah.
Your what if comment and thinking about things, but what if it could be different? In the book, it's obviously very much about you as a personal person and what if your world was different. But for me, in this transformation program, if in those sessions everyone's thinking and feeling that and no one's owning up to it, what if they did own up to it? And are you seeing that the transformation leads, those that are chairing the meeting, scheduling the workshops, do you think in your experience they've seen that okay moment to the same level as the people sitting around the table? Do you think they've seen it and ignored it? Do you think they're seeing it and don't know how to deal with it? Or do you think they're seeing it and dealing with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that, in the book, I say, okay is okay. Some of the time, you do need a level of normal. Okay. It can't always be crazy and wild because it's exhausting to work like that. You can't be asking what if every day, but you need to know when to do it. So, okay does have its space. And we do need to have a little bit of structure and rigor. Okay. If we're going to deliver, we just do. Okay. I'm not saying you have to burn the whole place down every day to move forward. So what surprises me, I think, is always coming back to what is the transformational project setting out to achieve? Okay. What are the objectives? What are the benefits? Who does it benefit? Why does it benefit? What costs are being saved? What costs are being spent? So the real basics here. We have somewhere to be. We've got to get there. And what surprises me with leadership is that they are tasked to make sure that happens. And then the various layers are going to deliver it and have their own level of accountability and autonomy to make sure that happens. And what surprises me is that the best leaders set it up right from the beginning. This is how we will do it. These are the type of meetings we will have. This is how we'll decide. This is, if things go wrong, this is how we'll learn. This is how we'll deal with it. If we get it wrong, we'll learn from it. But it's so rare. And so when the wheels start coming off and the signs are really visible and audible, you hear when things are not beginning to not work. And what surprises me is when leadership decide to ignore it. And then you think, well, why are you ignoring it? And if you ignore it, do you know the impact of what's going to happen and when? Because that loose wheel will fall off at some point. And then that suddenly has an impact again. It's either the cost, it's a people thing, it'll be arguments, it'll be discontent. And all of those things have a dramatic impact on two things. One, commitment. If people don't feel committed to something because they're not involved or they're not being listened to or they're not heard or they can't ask what if, that again has a knock-on effect. And that knock-on effect might not be tomorrow or next week or the week after. It might be on the end user when you've delivered the product and it's slightly more inferior than it should have been because the quality isn't there because there's been a lack of commitment and they don't care anymore because they're not being listened to. So you see it. You see it happening. And again, it manifests itself in poor communication. We need to know this stuff. We're not hearing it. Why? It manifests itself in town halls where it's a one-way conversation. And that behind the scenes, you might be sitting with someone with your headphones on and you're looking at each other and going, what is this? So they're not listening. And I think what we need to do, and where sort of like my Be More Punk thing comes in, is it's not difficult to build this stuff in.
It isn't difficult. It is difficult. And, many of the stories you're sharing there, I can totally reflect and resonate with. And I think, in all the programs I've been on, in many ways, the kickoff has a lot of that. It has the vision, the strategy, what we're hoping to achieve, the benefits. And everyone's on a high and everyone's, sharing what they're thinking and feeling. It's the long game transformation. And, when as you said, when the project starts to come off the rails or starts to slip, and there's always good reason for things slipping, that's when it sometimes feels like we have to get this bee punk
Yeah.
up or down, get this bee punk in front of us
Yeah.
and say, is this a punk moment?
Yeah.
So it's not, as you said, it's not continuously doing the what if, but recognizing that this is a punk moment, and how we deal with that collectively or individually to address it, because that's the human side of transformation. And I think that punk moment, when it's missing, starts to mean that your transformation isn't really gonna stick. And what do you think transformation leaders could do to create the punk environment for their projects? Bearing in mind that transformation isn't a 3-month project. It can often be 2 to 3 years of hard work.
Well, you could look at there's 6 values in the book, and you could look at each one of those. I do have a framework associated with the values, which is based on agile people, agile HR. So there are and a very key stages you can do in all of these. But I think as a basic, have the values on the wall. So I've got things like it's be anti-okay, right? Know when to ask what if. Are things okay? Are we doing what we need to do? All right. Yeah, okay. Do we know that? Are we being really clear? Are we making sure we're monitoring and we're reviewing and we're checking that the things we said we need to do, we are doing? Okay. And then we'll come on to how you create the environment for that. The other one is when you see something happening, you need to boot out bullshit, because a fundamental part of where we go wrong is people not speaking up and people not calling out stuff that isn't working or is counterproductive. And that's not just the human side of it. I think our meetings are terrible, and I think we're all, everyone's speaking over each other. It's the tangible stuff as well. I don't think we're building that quite right. I don't think that's what the user wants. Have we asked them? Have we checked in with them? So we need to do this stuff. And there's one of the other ones is smash change. It's about going. Transformation isn't just about delivering the software or whatever. It's change. So with change is multi-layered, and we know that, right? So smashing change it's not just about delivering the change. It's who's involved in it. How are we communicating it? What does it feel like? How long is it going to take? At what point do we have to stop and go, how's it going? I wonder how's it going. So I do believe, like you said, where we have to really think about what we do is about creating the right environment for me. All right. And the first, it's psychological safety.
Totally.
It's talked about a lot. It's buzzwordy. It's not successfully created and delivered well enough in any environment, in any organizations I've ever worked for.
It's a tough one. I mean, it is a tough
it
one. That whole psychological safety is definitely a tough one. And I think, what I remember very clearly is when you and I worked at WPP.
Yeah.
And you were part of the service design team, and we were bringing in a lot of design thinking and service design models. And what that really helped me do is amplify that reconnect side of the delivery programs that we were delivering in, and a really powerful model, which I think helps psychological safety. I wonder what your view is that what are people thinking, saying, doing, and hearing at any moment? And I feel we may think about that from a delivery point of view, but as a transformational leader, how many of those transformational leaders are walking out of a meeting and finding the time to reflect on, what did I really see? What were people really doing? What were people really saying? And how do I think people were feeling? Or are they going on to their next back-to-back meeting and not giving that space for them to even understand what might be happening in the team? And therefore maybe not even be conscious of this psychological safety concept. What do you think?
It's a really good observation that the back-to-back meetings, no time, no space. So with psychological safety, I think people they see it as too hard, right? It's not, all right? I think what they forget is that you can still have psychological safety within within the limits of the organization, okay, it's not an opportunity for everyone to speak up about everything. We still got a job to do. We still work within an organization or within the level of transformation within there that it has its limits, and we have to work within those, and we have to understand that as workers and as managers and leaders. We have to accept that. But it's just making sure you've got the parameters in place for a start. Just have the parameters so that you know, is it going to, are we going to be able to talk about this stuff up front? And that in case it builds pace for us, we can move forward. Or if we're not doing it, it builds barriers. So one of the things, like you just said there, is I think it's about providing space here, and that people need time to reflect and think and have a voice. And so if leaders are going from back to back to back to back to back to back, are they really, really seeing, and again here, who's delivering the transformation? And at the moment, I still think it's mostly people.
Totally.
So if that's that's our fundamental reason for success of a transformation. And what are people? They're human beings. And these human beings, with all their feelings and their thoughts, need to be considered if you want to deliver. So I think it's space. If you don't give it the time and the environment, how are you ever going to know?
Totally. And I think this, in terms of whatever next, making transformation more human, more honest, and more likely to stick. This is where you and I are coming together with our books.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that being human and being honest has benefit. And your book is showing that there's a more, let's say, funky, punky approach to it that is different to what the 1960s and many of the foundations of the methodologies we're all following to build that team. It's very different, and it's more grounded in humans. We're just humans. We're not machines. We're humans. And I'm going to have to show the book one more time. Being more punk might be the answer to help us make us more human. And if we did that, if I'm a chief transformation officer, if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, oh God, I'm not finding the space to go on this punk journey and to recognize the punk moment. If they did take that space and that time to be more punk, what difference do you think it would make to their program and their team spirit, and actually the benefits of what flows from having those place cards in their mind when they're going through the transformation program?
Well, first of all, they should be using the 5 lenses from whatever next. They should be using that as a framework. And then I think what more punk does is just a bit more challenging. It's quite honest. Yours is honest. Mine's honest and a bit confrontational. It sort of says, instead of saying, right, we don't need to be nice about everything all the time. It doesn't get us anywhere. We want a nice environment. We want to work together, but sometimes you've got to be a bit more challenging. And that's challenging with purpose and a human understanding of why we're challenging. People want to do their best work, right? They just do. Okay. We've just got to give them the environment to do it. So I think what's interesting about, they say, I don't want a punk and be more punk in my business. Why would I want that? Why would I want to boot out bullshit and be anti-okay and be wrong? I don't want to be wrong. I want to be wrong. But it's underpinned with my 40 years of working. And the reason you want to do it is because if we are saying fundamentally people will deliver your transformation, and of course it's people within tech and people in all the other functions, it's people, right? And so if you worked in a factory and you had a machine that churned out, that made all your money, I'll tell you what you'd do. You'd spend every working hour making sure that was the most efficient machine ever. Every part would work. It would run at a brilliant rate of, production. You'd be really look after that thing. We don't do the same with human beings. What you need to do is, it's a bit gutting. You need to look after, you need to consider their feelings. What are they feeling, when they're feeling, and why are they feeling it? And the reason is because it will dictate their behavior. And then you as a leader in your transformation can drive negative behavior, or you can drive positive behavior. And both of those things will have an impact. negative feelings drive negative behavior, drive negative productivity, lack of commitment, lack of trust. Okay. These are problems. These are real problems. Positive opportunities, positive feelings towards positive outcomes. It keeps moving on. It's pretty simple human being stuff that if you want the best from people, don't make them feel crap all the time and give them an opportunity to say why they feel that way. Drive better behaviors, get better outcomes.
And I think that safety bit, I think, the safer you make the environment for everybody, the more everybody will go out and feel safe. And the more they have the confidence to go and talk to people outside the project and program to get their point of views and bring them in. And I think, as we're talking, I'm sort of hearing this is team members being punk. This is leaders providing the environment to be punk. But actually, I feel leaders can be punk too. And as a team member, when our leader starts being punk, we can't think, oh, our leader's being punk. That's so, let's say, unfair. I think really forget the leader, the team member. We're all in this together. Being punk suits all of us. And let's create the environments in our projects and transformations to make them punky and funky and not 2020s.
It's about energy. It's the reason, I work with punk. It's energy. It's about creating, and that environment and that kind of feeling that, hey man, we want to do this. And do you know what? It might even be fun.
Might even be fun.
How dare you mention that word? Look, we want to do our best work. And as a human being, we're talking intrinsic and extrinsic motivation here. If you're the leader, do you know what? You still want to do a good job and you still want to enjoy it. And the person right at the front line, they want the same. That's because we're human beings.
Totally.
That's what we need,
Totally.
So let's feed that a bit. Let's understand that a bit better.
Totally. So look, we're in 2026.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to mention how many years you've been at work and how many more years 2026 is for you. But at the end of 2026, what would good look like for you with the launch of your book?
Yeah.
And the movement you're trying to create? What would it really look like for you? And what can we all do to buy into being more punk?
Okay. I'll start with something more tangible again for people who might be listening in and just thinking about work, and they're thinking about their projects, and they're thinking about their teams, and they're thinking about I'm going to have to say it again, but we've got to get better at the psychological safety bit. All right. Because it opens up so many doors and opportunities to explore the human side of us. We've got to get better at it. And what I think I'd love to see for this year is more organizations and teams understanding it and understanding how it works for them, because it doesn't have to be, this enormous hippie based fluffy, oh God, we can't have everyone saying how they feel every 5 minutes. You can have a thing that works for you. There's a structure to it. It can be implemented and understood. All right. You can do it, because I think the knock-on effect is so vast. I think then you do need to be more punk. You've got to look at some of the values I've worked with over these years, why they've worked for me, okay, and why they'll work for you, okay. And as part of the book, I explain where I got it wrong as well. I haven't got it right every time. I've got it spectacularly wrong. I've learned from that, and that's why we can get it right. And you're never going to get it always right. And punk is an acronym. If you look at the book cover, it's people using their nous and know-how. All right. So from my perspective, I believe everyone either has an enormous amount of information and experience inside them that is untapped. You go to work, you do the job, you're in the confines of that job or that role description. That's not who you are. That's not who your team are. They've got so much more to offer. You've got to dig deeper. And that's that's to get to know people more deeply. All right. And then not only does that help what you're doing in your transformation, it helps your organization. When you understand what a person is as a whole, they can move around. They're not stuck where they are. And that's career opportunities. That's moving to other transformations or projects. And then you don't know what they've done in their past to bring something new to the table. So we need to get to know people better, because then that also allows us to understand what motivates them.
Totally. I mean, I guess as you're talking there, and I'm sort of reflecting back to the beginning of our conversation, when you said, the light bulb moment for you was looking at some of the training and development modules that felt 1960s. In some ways, I've been in the transformation programs where people know who I am, they know what job I do, and they might know my personality type based on a Myers-Briggs or
Yeah,
some disc thing. And they
yeah,
might know if I'm creative, assertive, analytical, but they don't know who I am.
no,
And I think what you're saying there is if in 20 to go further below what role I'm in and what personality type I am, which feels more horoscopy to be fair, and
yeah,
more into what I think, what I feel, what I do and what I say, and who my team members, what they're all thinking, saying, feeling and doing, and knowing more people at that level, that human side of transformation will start to matter,
yeah,
really start to matter. And I think we are all in danger of our transformation programs that we're on, that meeting the deadline, meeting the budget, producing the right reports in the right slide deck is very important. But we
yeah,
need
of
to
course.
balance up. We need to balance up that human and honest side. And as you say, use the acronym of PUNK. Remind me of what you said that was?
People using their Nelson know-how to work better, to deliver more, to feel happier in their lives, to feel happier at work. That's what it
And for
is.
me, knowing what know-how you have and who you are and what you bring, that's going to be ultimately really important. So,
Well,
Simon, look, as
yeah,
ever, you and I, I love conversations with you. We're slightly different, no doubt
yeah,
about it. The book is going to be, it's in my reference books, my top 20 reference books that I've got next to me and will remain so. I think those values are often worth reflecting on, finding the space to reflect on. Um, and I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. And I'm so pleased we're connected. And I'm so pleased that you can see that the 5 lenses of whatever next sort of provides that Venn diagram with Be More Punk.
yeah, nice.
So if in 2026 transformation leaders are taking a look at both books,
Yeah,
I think their transformations are going to stick, don't
yeah.
you?
That would be it. Do you know what? I guarantee it. So,
Guarantee it.
so you better be talking
Brilliant.
to us. Come on, teams. It's been
Exactly.
brilliant. Thanks so much for having me. It's been great to get the book out there a little bit and talk about our experience and we know things can be better. I think that's what we
Totally.
believe in.
Totally. Let's jump into the 2030, Simon.
Yeah.